Yo, how's it going everybody? It's me, Arctic. Today's video we're going to be going over a complete sub DPS build guide for Shenhe. Basically, I'm going to be talking about either route you can go. You can either go a route of where you're just stacking her with a whole bunch of attack to buff your other teammates, or you can go the route where you're actually going to be buffing Shenhe in terms of her damage and mainly focusing on her ult damage and for her sub DPS. Be talking about the best artifacts and weapon choice for this build guide. But if you are new to the channel, remember to subscribe. I'm trying to get to 10,000 subscribers. But also remember to check out my second anime channel. I'm trying to grow that quite a bit recently. Really mean a lot if you guys would go over there and drop a follow. Okay, let's get back to the video. Okay, so in terms of Shenhe's overall kit, basically, she can perform as a sub DPS, basically using her elemental skill to buff other teammates with her icy quills. Basically, her icy quills I would consider her sub DPS damage, considering that it is actually tied to one of her skills. But then she also has a elemental burst that does a pretty okay amount of damage if you actually build for that. And so we're either basically going to focus on getting the most out of the icy quill damage if you are planning on using her with a lot of other cryo teammates, or we're focusing the most out of getting damage out of her elemental burst if you're using her with non-cryo teammates. Basically, if you're using her with like a Eula or like a Raiden or something like that, and basically a physical team comp, I would recommend going more for the ult damage versus the icy quill. For weapon choice for Shenhe, there's two routes we can basically go. We can either go the route of going with like more so of an energy recharge build, basically focusing on making sure her elemental burst stays up, or we can go the route of basically buffing the heck out of her attack, which I think is probably going to be the better route if you are going for an all cryo team comp. And what that's going to basically allow you to do is make larger icy quills, which are actually going to buff your other teammates a whole lot more. So I'm basically going to be covering all the viable options for these two different builds. Okay, and so Blackcliff polearm is going to be a pretty decent sub DPS weapon for Shenhe, especially if you are actually going to be defeating enemies, because then you get this extra attack percent, which is going to be very nice. But then this also has crit damage, which is going to be a pretty good stat to have as well. The reason I'm basically talking about this one, even though it's not going to be like specifically like one of the best in slots for sub DPS, is because like a lot of people can actually have access to this weapon because it is one of the rotating shop weapons, and I think this one would be a pretty baseline kind of average and good weapon for her. And basically the same stuff that I said about the Blackcliff polearm, I basically am going to say about the deathmatch. It's basically a pretty base average weapon. If you are just using it for like its crit stats, basically it'll end up giving you some damage out of this, but it's not really that particularly good if you are going for like icy quill damage or if you are going for burst damage, really. In terms of basically the best in slot weapon for actually creating these icy quills, at least in terms of the 4 stars, is actually going to be the Lithic Spirit. And now the reason behind this is because Shenhe is actually a leeway character, which is basically going to be able to activate this passive right here, and especially if you are using her with other leeway characters like Ganyu, something like that, that would be a pretty good combo to use her with. Because you basically get this 7% attack and also 3% crit rate for each leeway party member that you have. Plus this weapon has a very high base attack and it also comes with attack percent, so it's going to give you a lot of icy quill damage. If you are going for more of a burst support kind of route, the Favonius Lance is actually a pretty good option. I was going to talk about the prototype Star Glitter, except that one, its passive doesn't really help you out that much. Basically, this one is going to give you some extra energy particles whenever you hit critical hits. And the other reason why this one's better than the prototype Star Glitter, which is the craftable one, is because this one has a lot higher of a base attack. That's going to factor into Shenhe's icy quill damage also. The catch is a pretty good sub DPS option for Shenhe as well, but this one's mainly for like just burst damage, and if you are running like an emblem set on her, basically running her as kind of like a Cryo Raiden in a way. This is going to give you a lot of energy recharge, but then it also at higher refinements it's going to give you some elemental burst damage and elemental burst crit rate. The weapon that's going to be extremely good on sub DPS Shenhe is going to be the Wavebreaker's Fin, and now the reason behind this is because its passive is actually going to give you some extra elemental burst damage bonus based on the elemental burst energy cost of other teammates. And so this one's kind of a universally good weapon, I would say, for sub DPS Shenhe. Its base attack goes all the way up to 620, so it's actually higher than the average 5-star weapon, and then you do get some attack percent on this as well. Out of the 5-star weapons, I'm just going to talk about these really quick, but Vortex Vanquisher, this one can potentially be a pretty good option if you are going for icy quill damage, and that's basically it, trying to get the most out of your icy quills. But basically, this one requires you to actually build up these stacks on the field by actually hitting enemies, which is going to be fine, except then you're not going to be using those icy quill stacks for like your hero elemental burst, which is where you get more of your damage from, I would say. Jade Wing Spear is probably a slightly better option, I would say, than Vortex Vanquisher, just because its crit rate is going to be nice for actually being able to do damage with your elemental burst, and it has a higher base attack, so if you are planning on going like 3 attack percent artifacts, you might actually be able to surpass this Vortex Vanquisher, or actually like be on par with it, I would say, with a little bit less effort. Passive is going to give you attack percent as well, and also a damage bonus after you get to the maximum stacks. So that's actually a pretty decent passive right there as well. Spine is going to be pretty good if you are going for an emblem set build, and also if you do plan on using like attack percent and basically energy recharge as your 2 main stats that you're actually going for. It's actually a pretty good weapon. It also gives you some crit rate, and it also gives you like a normal attack speed bonus. This one's overall a pretty decent weapon to actually use on Shenhe if you actually are going to be like auto attacking with her at least a little bit. But basically, if you are planning on using Shenhe as a main DPS, Staff of Homa is probably the best option, I would say, just because it does have a pretty decent base attack, comes with a large amount of crit damage, so that's going to definitely scale up your damage a whole bunch, but then it also gives you this attack bonus based on your max HP, and so that's going to basically further boost your amount of Icy Quill damage as well, and also your base damage that you're going to do also. Engulfing Lightning is a pretty solid option as well. It's basically going to give you around the same attack as you would be getting with the Staff of Homa, but the advantage of this is that you can run it with like an emblem build if you are going for more so of the emblem set, and then this is going to give you a lot more consistency on your elemental burst. But then the last weapon that I'm going to talk about is actually Shenhe's best in slot weapon for sub DPS, which is basically her main role, and this is the Calamity Queller. And so this is going to give you 12% all elemental damage bonus. So basically, I think that basically means that like all her elemental damage is going to be increased by 12. But then obtain Consummation for 20 seconds after using an elemental skill, causing attack to increase by 3.2% per second, and that gets to a maximum of 6 stacks, so that's pretty much going to take 6 seconds to actually get that, but the buff's going to last like the whole 20 seconds. But then also, when the character equipping this weapon is not on the field, the Consummation attacks is going to be doubled, so if she is actually off the field, you are going to be getting a lot more attack percent from this weapon. And also, this weapon has a 741 base attack with 16% attack, so it is definitely Shenhe's best in slot if you are going for like sub DPS on her. Okay, now in terms of artifact sets that are going to be good for her for sub DPS, I'm basically just going to scroll down as we go and basically talk about the ones that are actually going to be good. So Noblesse Oblige is going to be an okay set if you are planning on going for elemental burst damage and also a party attack buff. The reason that you would run this over like an emblem set is going to be because this is actually going to give you some more attack percent, and you can basically focus into attack percent more so than energy recharge, I would say. The Blizzard Stray set is a good sub DPS set also, especially if you are running her with like other cryo characters. It's going to be very nice. It's going to give you that extra like cryo damage bonus and also this extra crit rate. The Glacier and Snowfield set, I've been seeing a lot of people talking about the set. Now, it hasn't actually been confirmed to be releasing, but this one might actually be pretty good if you are running her in like a burst supporting kind of role. It increases your superconduct damage by 100%, and it basically increases your reaction damage, and also after you cast a burst, it's going to increase your cryo damage bonus by 30%. So in total, you'd be getting 45% damage bonus for cryo damage if you had actually run a 4-piece of this. So it's actually a pretty strong set. In terms of 2 pieces, the Shimenawa is a Resistance 2-piece and then a 2-piece of Glad. Basically running 2-piece of both of those is going to get you the most attack percent you can possibly have. And so that's really going to be a pretty solid set if you are going for like the Calamity Queller or something like that. Basically just running her for the most Icy Quill damage bonus for your team that you can possibly get. All of Sever Fate, it's a pretty good set. You've got to actually like get this energy recharge up quite a bit, but it's going to be pretty good, especially if you are using like Engulfing Lightning. You can get up to that 75% damage bonus on your elemental burst. But anyway, that's basically it for sub DPS Shenhe. Let me know if you guys liked the video down in the comments section below. I will also be doing a guide for main DPS Shenhe, and I will also be doing a guide for more so just a general build guide for Shenhe once we actually get her kit actually finalized and we actually generally know exactly what she's going to be. But anyway, it's been me, Arctic. I will see you guys in the next one. Farewell.